everybody, and welcome to my channel. I'm so excited this week to bring to you the weekly forecast for Thursday, September 16th, all the way through Wednesday, September 22nd. We have quite the big week in astrology this week. We've got a lot of shifting, we've got a lot of changing, we've got a full moon, we have the fall equinox, and we are, I think the elephant in the room is the fact that we are in the Mercury Retrograde pre-shadow. So pretty much anything that takes place during this time period is going to infiltrate this upcoming retrograde that we're about to step into. So I really want to get into it. I'm excited to talk about it. For every one of you that is a previous subscriber of my channel, sorry that I've been kind of MIA the past few weeks. I have been really busy and I had to kind of move some things around and restructure some things in order to get my butt back on YouTube. And I really miss you guys, and thank you so much for still being here and showing up to watch. And I am going to make it my goal to continue showing up for you guys too. And if you have never met me before, my name is Yelena. I'm really excited to meet you. I'm an intuitive astrologer. And if you are interested in weekly forecasts and other educational astrological content, then make sure to tap that subscribe button below. So anyways, I'm really excited, like I said, to be back. And I want to get into this forecast. So just a couple quick housekeeping things, or that this is a general forecast. So this is not going to, not every single transit is going to be relative to you as a person. So how this works is you have your own personal natal chart where all the planets are sitting when you were born, right? It's like a snapshot of the sky when you were born. Well, these planets that are constantly moving in the sky, which are called transits, which we talk about during this forecast, they will hit the planets in your chart in certain ways and activate them. Sometimes they activate you, sometimes they'll activate somebody else. And that's why not every part of a general forecast will resonate with you. So if you are looking to get a reading that's a little bit more personal, I do offer those as well. And there will be information on how to schedule that below in the description box. If you have any questions regarding scheduling a reading, which one to choose or anything like that, my email address is also listed in the description box below. So you can just contact me directly. Easy as that. And also, I use the tropical Western zodiac with whole sign houses in a mix of modern astrology and traditional Hellenistic concepts. So basically, I think that pretty much covers it. And I'm going to do this a little bit different today for those of you who are used to my videos. I usually don't share my screen, but today I'm going to, because I want to begin having the chart up on the screen. I like being able to see a visual, and thought maybe you guys might like that as well. So we're just going to give it a shot here. But we'll go ahead and get started because I've got a lot of information to bring to you guys. And we've got this, like I said, this big full moon illumination this week. We're moving into fall. The equinox is coming up. But we kind of shift into some of the more intense energies that are going to be brought into focus the final 3 months of this year. The end of September, I'm not going to lie, is a little bit more challenging. So is October, so is November, and so is December. These are not things to be scared of, though, because I was just reminded by an astrology friend of mine the other day that we aren't to fear these transits. They are for our growth and for our evolution, right? So any of these, I'm in the mindset where I'm like, okay, I'm ready for the challenge and I'm up for it. Bring it on, right? Even though, like, obviously when we're sitting in it, we might not be saying that, right? But at least we can kind of all get in that mindset before we move into this video. I'm like giving you guys a little pep talk that somebody gave me the other day. And I know a lot of us have a lot of projects going on. We've got goals that we're trying to achieve. We're all moving in certain directions and we're like, okay, I don't want roadblocks. Never do we want roadblocks. But you guys, we're moving into a retrograde. We've got all the outer planets currently in retrograde, even though soon some of them will be moving forward, which will create a lot of shifts and a lot of changes in our lives. So we've been having a lot of internally focused type of energy lately. And that will continue as we move into this Mercury retrograde cycle. But before I even talk about anything that's going on right now, first, let's backtrack. I want to let you all know kind of where we're at. So first and foremost, we are in the Mercury retrograde pre-shadow. So for anyone who might not know what that means, Mercury has this apparent is the key word there, backwards movement in the sky. Okay, so it appears to move backwards, but it symbolically affects us here on this planet. So in the pre-shadow period, Mercury will be moving backward between the degrees of 25 and 10 in the sign of Libra. So right now, Mercury is moving forward through those degrees, 10 through 25. Okay. So this is what's called the pre-shadow period, where some of the themes, maybe some conversations or people or events or topics that we might be faced with or challenged with, or things that might come up for us during this retrograde period, are potentially going to present themselves in certain and sometimes tricky and mysterious ways, because Mercury is the trickster planet during this time period. So stay extra aware of what's going on during this time, because I've already seen a lot of things where I'm like, oh, okay, well, obviously this is something that's going to be playing itself out for a while, right? So it's really cool to even take a journal day by day and be like, okay, Mercury's at this degree today, so that when Mercury retrogrades back to that degree, maybe you can see if there's some correlation with different topics that were happening at that degree, if that makes any sense. So anywho, let's go ahead and discuss. So the reason I bring that up at the beginning here first too, is because I think a lot of these things that are kind of playing themselves out this week and next week are going to really be part of what's brought up for this Mercury retrograde. These are all different transits that are kind of setting the stage, not only for the next 3 months to come, but in more of a localized time period. It's for this Mercury retrograde period that begins on the 26th of September, which we'll talk about more next week. So let's move into this week's forecast. So as you can see up on the screen right here, we're going to start with Thursday, September 16th. And the big transit this day, which I really like, is the sun, which as you can see is over here in the sign of Virgo at the very last decan. And it is making a trine. So we can see this big, beautiful blue line right here over to Pluto in the sign of Capricorn, which is also retrograde. So a trine is of the nature of Jupiter. It's a really nice and harmonious aspect. It can bring us a lot of ease and opportunity and just typically a lot of flow. And it's also, like I said, of the nature of Jupiter. So it can typically exacerbate things, make them bigger, expand upon them, make them a bigger deal. So while on one version of this aspect, I really like it because I think that it can fill us with passion and excitement and drive and ambition, and really like a lot of laser focus as it pertains to our goals and our ambitions and our purpose moving forward. But on the other hand, Pluto is a very transformative type of planet. And I think that there's this energy of maybe having to reassess and realign and transform our visions or ideas for where we are moving, our goals, our purpose, and our drive of how we're going to get there. So I think that there's this opportunity here that can be a little bit more challenging or uncomfortable when we realize that we have to make some changes, or we need to re-envision the direction that we're moving in. And that's okay, because we need these little like signposts, these little pit stops where we can look at life and how it is and the direction that we're moving, our goals, our ambitions, and we can say, okay, this is what's not working and this is what is. This is what needs to be transformed. This is where I need to refocus. And I think that we're reaching a pit stop right here, and we've kind of been heading in that direction. So this is a really good day to maybe readjust some things and, get excited about where we're heading, but also know that it might take a little bit of a transformative effect for us to really get there. Okay. But we look at that as a valuable thing. So do something purposeful towards what it is that you're trying to achieve on this day. This is a really good opportunity, a powerful time period to do that. I think that this could be really nice energy for interaction with people who are in positions of authority. There could be some powerful conversations or collaborations in some way. It could be just maybe a day that's really powerful towards your sense of self and your ego in a healthy way, potentially, right? You want to watch out that you're not overexerting your power or anything, because, like I said, Jupiter can kind of exacerbate on things. So just take note of where you're at right now. But this can potentially be a really powerful day to reassess where you're going moving forward. So then we'll go ahead and we'll move forward to the 17th, because like I said, I kind of want to blow through these first few days, although these transits are important, so I do want to touch on them. This weekend I see being potentially a little bit more challenging. Saturn, when Saturn gets involved with things in more challenging aspects, it can be kind of party pooper, I guess you could say. And this weekend certainly does hold with it that energy a little bit. We've got Venus over here in the sign of Scorpio. So if you guys aren't already aware, Venus loves to be over here in Taurus. And Venus is in what's called the sign of her detriment. So she doesn't operate as efficiently as if she were at home in Taurus or in Libra, the two signs that she prefers to be in. And Venus rules over things like our desires and the things that we find pleasurable, our connections that are usually harmonious with other people and things like that. The bringing together of people, reuniting, celebration, friendship, collaboration, all of those kinds of things, and our money and things like that. So just even the fact that Venus is in the sign of Scorpio is kind of a little bit of a rain on the parade of all of those types of things. Where things could potentially be a little bit easier, more harmonious with our connections with others and things like that. They take a little bit of a deep dive into intensity in the sign of Scorpio, diving into things that are deep and dark that we normally would not be taking a look at. So that's a challenge in itself. And on top of that, Venus is in a really challenging square. These red lines right here are the squares, and those are challenging communications between planets. And this is with Saturn, and Saturn is the big malefic in traditional astrology, which is more challenging influence, right? So even though Venus is in the superior position here, she's dominant, she's kind of like in charge, it's still a little bit more challenging. Saturn is much more well dignified. It's a home sign of Aquarius. So what could all of this mean? These are just different ways of like assessing what condition the planets are in. But potentially, I really think that Venus having a lot to do with like our self-worth, the things that we value, what makes us feel beautiful, what makes us feel maybe like other people value us and things like that could potentially be challenged. We could feel suppressed. We could feel that that's suppressed in some way. We could feel like there's some sort of roadblock. There's an overall like depression. We're being told no in certain ways. We're not getting maybe the recognition that we feel we deserve in certain areas of life. I really think that this could be bringing up challenges or questions as it pertains to what you value, how you value yourself. You could have some boundary issues within relationships as well. Saturn rules over boundaries. With a square, there's always a challenge with that requires us to take some sort of action. So maybe you are being challenged by a partner, or a partner is challenging you, or maybe it's within the dynamics of a friendship or something like that, where there's just things that aren't working as harmonious. This could even be with some sort of authority figure, because Saturn rules over authority figures, bosses, things like that, where things aren't going as pleasurable, as favorable, as harmonious as they always or as they usually could. And you're having to kind of pivot or make some type of change, or you're feeling pressure to make some type of change in some way. I think that Venus being ruling over the things that we truly desire, there could be a delay with our desires and the things that we want to bring to fruition in some way. We might be being told no, not happening. Things aren't happening maybe as fast as you would like them to. And that can be just really frustrating, right? Things aren't moving forward in the way that we would have hoped. Even with Venus ruling over things like money, we could be potentially cut off or restricted in some way from a resource, some type of finance, something pertaining to our bank accounts or something like that. Maybe even just feeling rejected in some way by a group of friends or by other people or by a spouse, or feeling a lack of being beautiful, like you just don't feel good. There's not that pleasure there. Relationships, romance, dating, all of those things could feel like hard work. It could feel just like a burden in some way, right? So that's just something to kind of keep your eye out for over the weekend. It's kind of like setting the stage as we move into this full moon. Luckily, that will be waning after Friday, so the energy will begin to dissipate a little bit, but it does look like it kind of sets the stage for Friday and Saturday, which looks a bit challenging. I'm going to go ahead and move forward all the way to the 20th, because that's pretty much, other than a lot of aspects that the moon is going to be making over the weekend, that's really the last thing that I want to bring to focus. This is the day of the full moon, which is Monday, September 20th. And before the full moon comes exact, we actually have a really nice trine between Mercury and Jupiter. Now, Mercury and Jupiter are two planets of completely different natures. Mercury is like analytical, logic-based, detail-oriented, very scientific-minded, where, focuses on the details and the nitty-gritty of things, where Jupiter is very expansive. It's broad. It focuses on the bigger picture. And these two things can kind of get convoluted a little bit. So even though it's a trine, some of us may get lost in the freaking details and like not be able to see the big picture, and it can be really frustrating, or vice versa. Maybe you're just thinking about the big picture and you're not focusing at all on the details. And this may give you the ideas and opportunities in order to make the adjustments that are necessary to do that. So whatever these plans, these goals are that we have moving forward, right? That are being challenged a little bit this week, where we're having to change, we're having to pivot and move a little bit. This gives us an opportunity to expand our mind, to have a lot of ideas come in. But being that Mercury is in the sign of Libra, I think that it's important that we maybe involve other people in these ideas, or we share these ideas with other people, and even just like putting them down on paper. Because when we have such big ideas and a lot of them are coming in at one time, I mean, this is taking place in two air signs. Ideas are constantly flowing just like the wind, and they can be easily lost if we're not writing them down, if we're not telling other people, we're not involving other people in some way. So make sure you're keeping track of these types of things, because you might be getting some really valuable insights that could help you moving forward with a lot of these shifts, changes, and potential challenges and blockages that may lie ahead. So this specific transit is really nice. Other than some of those minor challenges, Jupiter is the planet of somebody who is very optimistic and happy and joyful. And this brings that type of nature to our mindset, right? So even though there might be challenges, even though we just went through this weekend where our relationships could have potentially been challenged, or we weren't feeling good about ourselves in some way, or we had little issues and blockages to our money, or whatever it may have been for you, we're going to be able to look at all of that and be a little bit more optimistic about where we're going. Maybe we have some ideas about how to change it. And always when we have that Jupiter influence on our mind, that's always a really good thing. So we don't get stuck in that like melancholic type of temperament that sometimes Saturn can bring, right? So I think that overall this is really good. But this is definitely a major component to the Mercury retrograde period, because this, like I said, as Mercury retrogrades, there will be 2 additional hits of this. So keep track of maybe what comes up during this day. I think that this is really going to be a nice transit throughout this retrograde period. That's like, okay, you're getting hit with all these challenges, but we're going to help you to build that inner faith and trust and stay optimistic about what's coming in the future, and help you to pivot and make these transitions with as much ease in the mind as humanly possible. There could even bring a nice mutual understanding within relationships, some ease and harmony within things like that. It might bring in the right people or places or ideas or opportunities that you need to assist you in navigating this time period, right? So keep an eye of that. I just want to give you the additional 2 dates that this transit's going to be taking place. So you want to take note of, obviously, Monday, September 20th, as well as the second hit, which is going to take place on October 4th, which is when Mercury will be retrograde in the middle of its retrograde cycle. And then the third hit, which is November 1st, which I believe is the day before Mercury exits its post shadow. So Mercury will be moving direct at that point. So this is a storyline that's going to be playing out. We have a couple storylines that are going to be running consecutive with each other. We'll talk about one that's going to include Pluto in a moment here. So just keep in mind, try not to get lost in the details. Try not to get lost in the big picture, and let's try to integrate them and bring them together. Take note of all of your ideas. These are just some important factors that I wanted to keep you aware of. But after this is taking place, then we have the full moon illumination, which this chart is actually specifically for the full moon. A full moon, if you weren't already aware, is when the sun and the moon are opposing each other in the sky. So as you can see here, we've got the sun at 28 degrees of Virgo, opposing the moon over here in Pisces at 28 degrees. So this is happening at the very end degrees of Pisces. And Pisces also happens to be the final zodiac sign of all 12, right? So as you can kind of see, we are wrapping up some cycles. We're wrapping up the lunation, full moon lunations through all 12 signs. And also with this full moon occurring at the 28th degree, which is, it's one of the end degrees. This is mature energy in the sign of Pisces, which is mastery. It's wrapping up of a cycle. It's a release point. It's a letting go point. And that's the same that holds true with the sign of Pisces in general. It's all about wrapping things up. Now, this also runs in tandem with what a full moon represents in general, things reaching their fulfillment, right? It could be the culmination of things, or things reaching a certain point of maturity. And maybe we want to celebrate how far we've come, or look at our accomplishments thus far, make adjustments, release whatever needs to be released in order for us to move forward. Now, when I mention all these shifts and changes, I know it can be kind of challenging, but you might start to feel this in your own life. And I want to bring into focus here that when this lunation is exact, as you can see here, we've got the moon, which is separating from a conjunction with Neptune. So what I think about this is the very sensitive water sign of Pisces. And I think these shifts in all of our lives can potentially be rather confusing at this point, or at least we're coming off of this certain level of confusion when things might be a little bit more foggy. There might be a lack of clarity of our direction moving forward. And we know that there's certain things that need to be released or let go of. But we're slowly pulling off of this fog, this lack of clarity at this time of the lunation. And like, for instance, Neptune is the planet of boundarylessness. It's the planet that brings a lack of clarity. It's a planet that could bring a fogginess in our lives, or it can bring deception with certain things, and maybe an over idealization, or putting certain things up on a pedestal. And then the disillusionment that comes following that when we realize that something wasn't as it seemed, or some path that we were taking doesn't pan out the way that we had anticipated. And it requires us to make some changes, which can be kind of frustrating. But at this point, the moon is pulling away from that Neptune alignment. And the sun is also moving away from its opposition to Neptune, which we experienced last week, which can, drain our energy, makes things a little bit confusing, make everything feel kind of heavy, and have us having a lack of clarity of purpose and a crisis in that area of life as well. So we are pulling away from this dynamic and this journey that this moon is on. But what's interesting is that, as we can see on this opposite side of the chart, we've got the sun, which is going to be moving in a couple days out of the sign of Virgo and into the sign of its fall, which is in the sign of Libra. It will then conjunct Mars, which is the planet is in Libra, is in the sign of its detriment. So you have two planets that aren't really faring very well. They're not able to operate to the best of their capacity, the best of their ability. And these are planets that have a lot to do with our purpose, our drive, our motivation, our willpower, and how we're moving forward in life. So as you can see, these things are taking a little bit of a hit. They might be inconvenienced a little bit, and there may be some type of fall or digression that's going to require us to pivot, because this is a cardinal sign, Libra, which is the associated with the shift of seasons. Okay, so there will be a swift movement of change, a pivoting that needs to take place. And this could potentially have a lot to do with our purpose in life, what we truly need and want in order to find joy, in order to make us happy and bring us true fulfillment. And it defines the overall plot line and the story of our lives and how that's all taking place. It can even represent things like our health and our vitality. So maybe you've noticed that maybe your chart is being aspected in a certain way, and your health could have potentially been taking a hit. Maybe your immune system was a little bit more susceptible to invasion last week, and you may have been feeling ill. I know there was quite a few people who told me that they were sick and they were having a really hard time bringing themselves back to health. So now you know why, right? And this could even pose to be a little bit more challenging as it comes to your association and relations with authority figures, maybe even with father figures or more masculine figures that are in your life. So these topics, like I said, as you can see, they're moving through a couple areas of difficulty, right? Because they're just moving out of an opposition from Neptune. That's challenging in itself. And now the Sun and Mars are in Libra, which are places that they are less than comfortable, and they have to learn how to deal with the discomfort, learn how to deal with environments that are contrary to their own, I guess you can say, right? So this can also challenge your willpower, your assertion, your drive, your energy, and your impulses to do things. So just keep an eye out for all of those types of things. I think obviously, without a doubt, these two planets are really being challenged. They're unable to operate at their best capacity. The Sun is moving into an area where usually it's all about self-assertion, individuation, the self, the ego, your purpose, your drive. And right now the Sun is having to compromise, and it's having to take into consideration other people. It's going to have to learn to meet the needs of other people. Either that, or if you are someone who is always overly focused and over concerned about meeting the needs of other people, and you're not taking your own self into consideration at all, there's going to have to be an adjustment in that area of life too. So you'll have to really consider maybe what side of the coin it falls on for you. The same goes for Mars. Its motivations are going to have to shift, right? Not to mention they're kind of sharing a room, if you will, because they're all in Libra, with Mercury over here, as you can see, which is later going to retrograde in this same sign with all of these planets involved, okay? There's a huge emphasis here of relational dynamics, okay? One-to-one connections and the dynamics that you have with other people. It's also going to bring into focus what's right, what's fair, what's just, and where we need to weigh out our options. It's the scales, right? Libra is the balancing scales, where we need to weigh out our options and just different things in our lives to bring them into more harmony, where we can experience more internal peace, where we can experience more balance, right? So whether that's balance within our relationships, whether that's balance with our tasks that we're doing in life, or whatever direction we're headed in. So with that said, I think that this lunation, this full moon in the sign of Pisces, is stepping us out of a time where we may have potentially been over idealizing something, where we may have potentially been putting too much effort into something, maybe even to the fault of our own, where another person wasn't really expecting all of that out of us, right? Pisces is the martyr. So it could be something like that as well. Maybe we're holding something up on a pedestal Maybe we've been trying to escape from something, and that all needs to be taken into consideration. We're not seeing something clearly. So yeah, these are all just things to take into consideration and make some shifts and changes, adjustments, let some things go, and celebrate your wins too. We don't want to forget that, right? Because this is a time of celebration, especially with the sun moving into Libra. This is also the fall equinox, which is the time of harvest. So all the things we've been working on are finally coming to fruition. It's the harvest time. So we also don't want to forget to give ourselves a big pat on the back with that as well. And when the sun, like I was saying before, moves into the sign of Libra, as you can see here, let's go ahead and move this forward. Yeah, so the sun will then be moving towards Mars. And when the sun moves into the sign of Libra, it is the fall equinox, which is a time of pivoting and shifting and changing. It's when we want to come more into balance and alignment, bring more harmony and peace into our interpersonal relationships. And these planets are also in the sign of Venus. Venus, like we had mentioned before, is in the sign of its detriment, Scorpio. So this all is not likely to happen without us having to dive deep into uncomfortable topics, uncomfortable things, uncomfortable one-on-one dynamics with other people, potentially uncomfortable conversations, with the realization of some secrets or some information that's being brought to the surface, for us to take a look at. And even bring into focus maybe your own feelings or someone else's feelings of jealousy, obsession, insecurities, lack of trust. All of those kinds of things could potentially be brought to the forefront. Now, I find it really synchronistic that all of this is taking place right in tandem with the fall equinox on September 22nd. And this represents the shift of the light half of the year into the dark half of the year, but this really is the balance of light and dark, right? And I think that's very symbolic as we transition into some of these more deep and challenging topics and subjects that we're discussing today. These areas of life when we're being required to shift and pivot, when we're being required to look at ourselves and our relationships with other people on a much deeper level. And it's very symbolic, right? And it's what's really interesting about the equinox, the fall equinox in the Northern Hemisphere, is that according to the Thema Mundi, which is the birth chart of the creation of the universe, it's used as a teaching tool in Hellenistic astrology to learn all of the concepts and everything like that. Cancer is rising, and Libra is on the IC, which is the subterranean, very low portion of the chart, which represents the underworld, right? Which could be our subconscious mind. It's those deeper, darker aspects. And in mythology, it was the realm of Hades. So it's just interesting that we are starting to deep dive into some of these more taboo, dark, mysterious, intense, and emotionally cathartic topics, especially with Venus transiting through that very sign of Scorpio. So I want to remind everybody here what we first touched on at the very beginning of the video, that this is a time and a major period of growth for a lot of us. So these transits are not necessarily to be feared, nothing for us to be frightful of. It's going to be maybe a little bit uncomfortable. It's maybe going to be a period of time when we're pressurized to make certain changes that we necessarily wouldn't have made before without the pressure being applied, right? And this retrograde pre-shadow and retrograde period itself is a really good time for us to go inward, to be a little bit more introspective about a lot of these big changes that are ahead of us. So it's actually kind of an exciting time when we can really grow and evolve, right? This full moon in Mercury retrograde really kicks off a lot of the intensity that's going to be taking place over the next couple of months. So let's celebrate our wins, reassess where we're at, decide what's no longer helpful with the sun at the final degrees of Virgo, and Virgo being that sign that's all about picking the wheat from the chaff and deciding what is helpful and what is not. So we need to do that in all of our lives to shift, because I believe that right now is going to be a very important time period when we either need to shift our path or we need to recommit to what it is that we're doing moving forward. So you guys have to be the deciding factor of what that means for you. And then on Wednesday, the 22nd, the final aspect that's going to be taking place on this day, after the sun moves and the fall equinox occurs, we have the very first hit of Mercury direct squaring Pluto, which can also be a little bit of a challenge here. This can, on one hand, make you want to seek the truth and be a big investigator of the truth and almost obsessing about that. You can be super deep in thought, have these deep thought-provoking insights that could potentially be a little bit eye-opening and emotionally intense that require you to realize some of the changes that you need to make. And it can be a little hard to know that, right? It can be a little bit mentally challenging and a little bit intense, and that's in those types of circumstances. This can even result in intense communications with other people. I think that it could even bring power struggles with mercurial types of people. I'm already kind of starting to see where this is going to be taking place in my life. I'm currently working with a car salesman, and you know how those types of dynamics can go. And I'm even getting some communication from them today where there's a little bit of power struggles going back and forth about pricing and things that were already promised to me. So I'm like, obviously this is something that's going to be playing out because I have to sign a damn contract to buy a car during the Mercury retrograde period that I really can't get around. So yeah, this is going to be interesting. So power struggles with mercurial types of people, which could potentially be car dealerships, salesmen, any type of like merchant or salesman of any sort. Mercurial types of people could also be like postal people, mailmen, maybe anybody in the transportation industry, mechanics, car mechanics, things like that, neighbors, siblings, relatives. So maybe there's some crazy family dynamics that are going on with you during this time. This is also a time when there could be miscommunications, power struggles with authority figures in your lives. Maybe this is going to be the start of the realization or revealing of some secrets. And this could be out in the world as well. So let's not forget that. So this revealing of information, this revealing of secrets, this is just the first layer of this though. So whatever happens during this time period, I wouldn't really take it too much to heart, a lot of these revelations, because the Mercury cycle is going to go back and forth over this square to Pluto. And we're not going to really see things clearly until Mercury starts moving direct. So this could be, you know, so many different things, but just keep an eye out for it. I'm going to give you the other dates here. So we've got the first hit on September 22nd, the second hit on October 1st, and the third hit on November 2nd when Mercury does move out of its shadow. So November 2nd, I would think, is when we're starting to see like the finalization of a lot of these different themes. Anyways, as you can see, we've got a lot going on this week. I think that it's going to be really important to be introspective, to not overdo it, to realize that some of our desires and our goals and our aspirations moving forward are going to require us to maybe pivot, make some changes, realign, recommit, reassess, and that things might not be moving forward as quickly or in the ways in which you may have anticipated them before, right? So it's going to be a really good time to stay patient, maybe do some journaling, take some time to focus on you. I know for me, my own personal medicine that I'm going to be doing is focusing on my yoga practice and being as disciplined as possible with that. Avoiding situations that I know could potentially be problematic and just kind of like stay to myself a little bit and flow in that area. So I would love to know maybe what you guys are planning on doing during this time period. Maybe we can all share some insights to get through this period a little bit more easily. If you have any questions regarding any of these transits or insights, or would like to share how they are maybe potentially affecting you, I would love to hear your experiences, your suggestions, your feedback, and the way that maybe you see all of this playing out. So feel free to leave that in the comment box below. Again, I'm so happy to be back here. If you found value in this video, make sure to tap that like button, leave me a comment, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button as well as the little bell icon next to it so you can be notified of whenever I post videos in the future. But thank you guys so very much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. Best of luck this week. Happy full moon in Pisces. I love you guys. Peace and namaste. Thank you very much.